So, welcome everyone to the Meaningful Day services, putting people on a pathway to success. This is webinar number 2. Today, what we're going to be talking about is setting goals and identifying places to teach, and then also how to use the positive personal profile and the skills assessment. The life skills assessment to really focus in on what the person really wants and needs to do. So let's get started. So again, just as a little reminder and refresher, how do we help people with intellectual and developmental disabilities become active contributing members of our community? And that is the sole purpose of the community life services that are the CLS services that Michigan offers. So what we really need to look at, though, as providers is to not just plug people into community activities, but to really reframe how we support these individuals and really look at starting with the person and starting with who they are, and not just creating services in the community and plugging people in. So no more boxes. The other thing that we need to really look at is how can we really integrate and tie people's services together and really tap into all the supports, their personal resources as well as paid provider resources and public resources, and how do we really kind of wrap that all together to make sure that that person is supported and in the community in value-adding, meaningful ways. So WorkLink, as we talked about last time, is a community-based program in San Francisco. It transcends, it started as an employment service, and we quickly realized that people were often isolated and lonely outside of work. So one of the things that we really looked at was how can we help them to be employed and also be participating in their community in meaningful ways. And that's when we kind of eyed the day services waivers and said, you know, these could be used in really functional ways. So that was what we started to use. We started to tap those waivers to really to bring people into the services and to really get them involved and again in meaningful ways in their community. So today, what our services look like is they are braided hourly services because we cannot provide services that are a day long. If a service is a day long, it means the person won't be able to braid it or tie it to other services. So they can't work and go to the gym. They can't work and see their friends. So what we were looking at is how can we really create braided services that are really responsive and flexible and also comprehensive. So that kind of these wraparound services that allow people to build a service plan to order based on their needs and based on their circumstances. So braided hourly services and offering both employment and community support services was really, really important. It's important to be able to have to be able to tap Department of Vocational Rehab's one-on-one support services for employment, so that you don't, I think we talked about it last time, you don't give the employer a short shift in training. So you know, many programs have tried to go it alone and tried to say, well, we won't offer employment, you know, through DVR. We'll just do it through our community support services. So there are some services out there that are trying to just make that work. But what happens is your community support services are in small groups because the rates are usually much lower. So it's really, really difficult to get people jobs and to train them if you're trying to do it under a small group waiver rate. So it's important to be able to offer a variety of services. So a one-on-one service for when they go to work, or a one-on-one service when they're fading from when they've gained independence and you're trying to create support services around them that that are are very individualized or very that occur during non-program hours, or to fade those braided services. It often helps to have a waiver or a one-on-one service that you can use short-term to kind of spin people up. So having a variety of braided hourly services is so important so that you can address each service need and address it well. The other thing that we focus on is that our program is 100% community-based. People do not start and stop their day or end their day at the WorkLink office. That leads to kind of disenfranchising them from their local neighborhoods and from the places that they're able to access. And it also doesn't allow us to teach them to go from their homes out into the community. So people are often, if you have a van service and you pick someone up at their door and you bring them to a location, that's far from their home, and from there you provide community integration. It's not very effective because you van them home and they don't know how to leave their house. They don't know how to leave their house and find things in their neighborhoods. So one of the things that we really support is making sure that home is the home base for services, and that our services start and stop at the person's door. So 100% integrated, 100% community-based. We don't use we do have an office that's right downtown. It's right on 100 different bus routes. So it's a great location, and we use it as a touchstone for people so that they know where to find us and know how to find help. We also use it for administrative purposes, but again, no classes, no, people don't start and stop their day there. We use meeting spots throughout the city, so we'll talk a little bit about that today too, where we teach them to get together and we teach them to find their friends. And we teach them in their own neighborhoods so that they can become active citizens in their own neighborhoods. We also focus on community integrated employment and really building those employability skills. When we first started, hence the name WorkLink, it was an employment service, and we were very, very dogmatic about it, and we're very much focused on employment. And again, we see employment as a foundation for a meaningful life, and it really is kind of the anchor for having a meaningful life, having that paycheck. And then also the dignity and self-worth that comes from being a productive member of society. So, that dignity that comes can't be understated. So we focus now on everybody having some sort of paid job or volunteer opportunity where they can give back, where they can see themselves as being a helper. Especially if the person is very reticent or has this idea that, work means janitorial jobs, or work means what I did in the workshop. And I didn't like that. So if you ask me if I want to work, I'm going to say no. I don't want to do that. So what we do is we use our community support services, the CLS services, to really get people out and to really explore what work can be. And to really help people to find kind of their strengths and their interests. And we utilize that then to inform our employment services. We also utilize it to really teach people the skills they need to be in a job. So we teach a lot of soft skills, which we're going to talk about today, and also how to ride the bus and feel confident so that they can get to and from work. And how to use their cell phone, how to use a computer, all of the things that are very, very important skills in today's workforce. The other thing that we really look at is we're looking at, individualizing, customized, person-driven services. So you can see that I talked a little bit earlier about offering one-on-one services so that you can support work and support it well, and support the employer and the individual in a very rich way. Small group ratios, again, keeping it very, very small. We don't want to be out in the community in large groups because it's impossible to teach. It's impossible to really teach people. If you have more than 4 individuals in a group, it can be very, very difficult for a community instructor to to support people well and to really instruct them. And it gets to be more of a field trip than an opportunity to really learn and teach. So small groups is really, really important. And I know it can be difficult with funding. And that's one of the things I think that we have to realize is that we are using these services in a very different way now. And the expectation is person-centered outcomes. So, I think a lot of state agencies now are really looking at, revising and reworking this so that providers are supported to do this in a way that results in that outcome. So these individualized smaller group services is really important. The other thing that's really important when you're looking at your program and who you serve is to really do what we refer to as kind of heterogeneous enrollment. So 1/3 of the people have significant disabilities. 1/3 of the people have kind of moderate support needs, and 1/3 of the people are a little more independent and can kind of get off the ground and running with just a little bit of support. So this allows you to really build and balance groups that you can be out in the community and you can support each and every person at the level that they need. If you have 2 or 3 people in a group who have significant support needs, it's going to, again, make it very, very difficult to instruct or teach in the others. So again, 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. We in some instances we've had people who specialize in behavioral issues, and so all of the people in the program have significant behavioral needs. It can be very difficult to take a small group of people with significant behavioral needs out into the community. So you want to make sure that you can really support people, and you also want to give them some peer mentors and some peer models that will help them to understand this is how we behave in the community and this is how we act. So we really, really, think that it's really beneficial to really look at your enrollment and making sure that you're kind of balancing it as you bring people in. The other thing that we look at is that all of our services are meaningful, and we use that definition of significance, purpose, and value. So it's significant to the person, or society. It's it's outcome oriented. Why are we doing this? We should be able to say that, and if something is meaningful, you'll have an answer to that question. So all services must be meaningful. And if we can't answer the question, why are we doing this for this person, or why is this person doing this, we don't provide that service, because we want to use our dollars and use our dollars wisely, and we want them to be meaningful. We don't want to just make it a time filling. Give them something to do. We want to make sure that our services are meaningful. So individualized, customized, person-driven supports. The other thing that we utilize is customized employment placement methods. So that discovery and employer engagement methods for customized employment are so successful, because especially with people with more significant support needs, and those are the individuals who typically get the community support services, you're going to need to customize employment positions. And again, that being motivated to do your job because you're interested in it is such an important piece. So customized employment placement methods and that discovery piece is so important. And many people have kind of said, well, customized employment is so difficult and labor intensive up in the beginning. Well, what we found is that we can actually use our community support services to do all of that preliminary discovery work, or the majority of it, so that our work services team, our employment services team, no longer has to do that intensive discovery. The community instructor comes with the positive personal profile and a skills assessment, so the team immediately knows, what that person's interests are, what would be, the things that, and their strengths. So our work services team is no longer responsible for really doing that discovery. So again, services, not programs. The expectation, again, is that the services will fade as the person's confidence and skills grow. They will no longer need the services. And again, with hourly services, you can do that in a very incremental way. And you can do it in an actively fading versus just kind of a cut and dry. They're in the program or they're out of the program. So again, looking at not putting people in programs, but providing services and supports. And it really does kind of change your mindset about how these services should be utilized. Uh-oh. Sorry. So again, services are tailored to the person. They're not programs or classes. It's really about following the person and learning to listen, and not to lead a person or to offer them choices. Here, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? Laura Owens, our the president of Transcend, refers to that as a dilemma. It's not a choice, it's a dilemma. So we try to steer clear of offering people choices like that, and having them, tell us about yourself, tell us who you are, tell us what you love to do. And then we look at, where does that happen, and who does this person need to be connected to? What do they need in order to achieve the desired goals or their dreams? And then our services are there to kind of support the person, and we incorporate them into the person's entire network. So we're looking at, what kinds of resources and supports do they have at home? What kinds of supports and resources will they need? And then, what kind of public resources are available, or to use technology in creative ways as well. So really, looking at the person more holistically and looking at them in a more individualized way. So tailoring the services. So again, individualized services versus programs. So the services are integrated into their network of support. Home is home base. It's not the facility or the center. The schedules are designed around real life. So it's not necessarily a Monday through Friday, 9 to 3 program day. When people first come into the program, when they first come into WorkLink, one of the things that we tend to see is that it is a little more 9 to 3, Monday through Friday, because we're trying to give people an opportunity to do things outside of work, and they tend to work Monday through Friday, or, many of them do, not all. So and in order to pull small groups together, we have to have people available, and many people do things on weekends with their families or others, so they're not so much available. So we have to do kind of our intensive instruction in small groups. So typically there are Monday through Friday kind of morning and afternoon activities, so that people can participate. It seems, that people are kind of used to that a little bit too. So, it does start out in more of a Monday through Friday 9 to 3 day. But as I talked about earlier, when we're fading services, we try to fade them to non-program hours. So evenings, weekends, and kind of after people have learned and are confident, we can quickly transition them into non-program hours and non-program days, without too much extra support from paid support from our staff. The other thing that we have is, again, those hourly rates, because that allows you to provide flexible supports that can really wrap around a job and address kind of the non-work needs for the individual. The services, again, are based on what's important for the individual, not focused on what's broken or what's wrong. So many people look at these services as we're going to use these to fix what's broken. And that kind of locks you into a corner, and it doesn't show you, who that person is and what they're all about. So it's really important to not focus on the deficits, but to really focus on how does that person define themselves and what's important for them and what's significant. And looking at, if it's an individual who's reliant on others, maybe what you could look at is increasing that person's self-reliance. So, if it's someone that has to be, teaching them to transfer from their wheelchair, from a wheelchair into a chair or into a car, teaching them to feed themselves, anything like that, or make a bowl of cereal, anything where they can be more independent and more self-reliant, and not get all bundled up in what's wrong and what's broken. And again, individualized, but not necessarily one-on-one. We do small groups because of funding. But we also have, there's in California, we have a rate called Tailored Day, which allows people to get one-on-one services. So if a person starts to become very confident and independent, we will switch them from the group services into the more one-on-one services so that we can tailor them even more to their needs and to their goals. So again, activities and groups are based on a mutual interest and building a critical skill. It's not a predetermined class, or it's not set by our staff or a curriculum. What we do is a person comes in and says, I want to learn to knit, or I want to learn to read, or I want to get together with my friends and do this. And so we'll put that on a whiteboard and we'll put that up, and we'll put the person's name up there. And then what we do is, when we have other people who have that same interest, or other people who would benefit from doing that for some reason, or would learn a critical skill, that person's name goes up on there. And then when we have a small group, what we do is we assign a community instructor who is then responsible for making it happen, finding the spot, finding where it's going to, where can we learn this out in the community, and then putting that together. So it's not a predetermined curriculum. It's not a module. It's not classes. It doesn't look like school. What we don't want is kind of, people locked into 12th grade forever, is what people are calling it, where they show up and there's, they put their stuff away in the lockers, and then they go into their classroom and they get classroom, instruction, and then they go out into the community to try that. We throw them right into the deep end of the pool, and out we go. And we really work with them on teaching in the moment and really kind of accessing things. Okay. It is not responding. Sorry, okay. So again, the benefits of this are amazing. What we end up with is the services that are really flexible and responsive. Our service plans can be tailored and individualized. We can really address work and non-work needs in a very comprehensive way. And it also, for people who kick my dog, it also makes employment more manageable and viable for people with more complex needs. Because when we first hung our shingle and we were just offering employment services, many families were reluctant to sign up their sons or daughters because they had more complex needs. And they said to us, well, what do we do while they can't stay home alone, and what do we do while you're looking for a job, and God forbid they lose their job, what would we do? We have this kind of house of cards built around them, and we can't manage community employment. We want something that's Monday through Friday, 9 to 3. And that's that's well and good, and that can be built with the community support services, certainly. And that's what we started doing, is we started saying they can do other things during the week in addition to the employment. And people were ecstatic about that. They knew, they want the best for their son or daughter, but it also has to be manageable for the family. So it allowed us to really, if someone did lose a job, we were able to ramp up the services in the community and the support services, and to give them something valuable and meaningful to do. And we would have them look at why did you lose that job? Was it a bad job match? Did we not do the discovery we should have? Was it social skills, or was there some sort of soft skills that needed to be addressed? And we could really kind of ramp that person up and kind of pick them up and dust them off and say, okay, well that didn't work, but let's see what's next. And we could make it so that people could kind of get back into the saddle and get back into employment. And not just leave them sit home and kind of wallow in failure. So it really did allow us to make employment manageable and viable for people with more complex needs, and to really support kind of that house of cards that many families have to build in order for their son or daughter to be engaged and active in the community. And again, our services can be flexible and responsive, really adjusting to changing lives and circumstances. I talked about the young woman who lost her grandmother in the last call, and we were able to really ramp up services and support her in ways that allowed her to really rebuild her life. And again, had we not had those community support services available, she probably would have ended up losing her job as well. And then as I mentioned before, we can really fade these services in an active way. As a person gains confidence and skills, we can start saying, okay, you're gonna travel to and from this meeting site on your own now, and now we're gonna start doing some other types of activities because you've got this, or it's time to braid in our work services, and let's start looking for employment. So it really allows us to really create this flexible, responsive way to serve people. It also encourages collaboration and it maximizes the use of our limited resources. Again, I talked about tying in and integrating personal resources and public resources so that it's not always just the provider, and it's the provider's responsibility to provide everything. That creates, again, that drives kind of a buffer between the person and society and their families. So what we want to do is really integrate all of these resources, and really, like it says, make stone soup for the person, so that they have a rich and integrated and inclusive life. So again, braiding services, not enough. Services must be meaningful. So again, the definition, if we can't say why is this person doing this, it's not a service that we'll provide. It has to have significance, purpose, or value for the individual. So, how do we find that? Again, it was through this positive personal profile. It really allows people to... It really allows people to, these retrievers. It really allows people to identify, who they are and to really define themselves. So in our last webinar, I had people take a look at this positive personal profile, and I kind of want to try and open the lines I can figure out how to do it. Or if people can maybe type in, and Renee, you're unmuted. I think people can actually unmute themselves too. I think I checked that box. So if people could, if people had an opportunity to take a look at this and take a minute to profile themselves, if people wanted to kind of talk about, what they thought about this profiling tool, and what they found out about themselves, or what's something that they maybe forgot about or didn't remember, and how people thought this worked. So does anybody want to chime in, or was anybody on the call able to utilize this tool? Okay.
It was too small for me to be able to read it.
Okay.
I don't know what the sections are.
Okay. Were you able to get, Renee sent out a PDF of the form. Were you trying to do it off the PowerPoint?
I was trying the PowerPoint, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there was a handout that went along that was the tool. So we'll make sure and resend that. So yeah, so dreams and goals is the first one, and that to me is front and center. Is what is this person really looking at? We kind of look at 3 to 5 years. What do you want to? Where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years, and what do we need to do to get you there? And what's important. And this person says learning to play the saxophone. And that right away is, you should be saying to yourself, where do saxophone players hang out? Who knows a saxophone player? Where can you learn to play a saxophone, right? And it gives you, it kind of steers you down the road to what is meaningful for people. And again, you're trying to really look at their values, what they bring. If their culture is really important to them, how can you integrate them into those types of activities? We're also looking at environmental preferences, like, where is a person most successful and most comfortable? And some of us like really wild, crazy, loud and engaging places, and other people are very quiet and introverted. And for them, being comfortable they need kind of quiet and and ways not to kind of engage with millions. So those are the things that we really look at, and we try to find also their learning style, positive personality traits, and one of the most important things on here is dislikes. So one of the things we're trying to find is what the person likes, but also what they hate. So if there's something that someone doesn't like, then we need to make sure and flag that. So in this person's profile, chaotic, loud places are something that person doesn't like, or being interrupted, or being, told what to do, being patronized, so really looking for places where the person is and I think I talked about the young man who didn't like dirt. And he was working at a garden, or he came in and he said, I want to work at a garden center. And we wrote it on his profile, and we went, racing out the door and got him this job. And 10 minutes in, we figured out that he didn't like dirt. And when we asked him, why did you say you wanted to work at a garden center? You were so confident. He said, because my teacher told me I should work at a garden center. And he had never worked at a garden center, and we forgot to ask. So, this is a great way to really kind of figure out who you're working with, and how they define themselves and what's important to them. So again, and it's one of the most important pieces to setting a goal for a person and building the skills that they need to be successful. So what does the person need to learn to be successful? So this is, again, the positive personal profile. What are my dreams and goals? What are my life experiences? Because many of the people will have a great difficulty filling this out because they don't have a lot of life experience. They only know what they've been shown. So, you talk to them about, what do you want to do for work? And they say, well, I want to be a janitor because that's what I know. So what we have to do is really kind of get away from that and start looking at, what makes you tick? What do you do at home when you have free time? Those are the things that we're trying to find. And then we're also trying to take them out and really explore things so that they can see, what's out there, and really kind of looking at, what they value and what they need, from social engagement. We have people too, there's many people in our program who, San Francisco is an incredibly diverse city. So many of them are very connected to their culture. So we try to wrap that in whenever possible. We try to really focus in, again, as I said, on what their talents and skills are. And then also, kind of looking at what don't they like? What are the things that we need to steer clear of? So interests, again, up at the top, you can see dreams and goals and interests are just the biggest and most important. We use this too, this positive personal profile, as part of our intake process. So before someone comes into the program, we give this to their families, we give this to their siblings, we give this to their teachers. And it's a very easy, approachable form. It's one page, so people don't get all knotted up and like, I don't have time to, do this. It literally, we just say to them, write you don't have to fill in every box, fill in what you know. And so people, it's very approachable. And this is the information we need. The other information that we need is, what do people need to learn? How do they function, or what are people doing for them now? What we need to do is figure that out. So this is our community assessment tool. So we refer to this now. It looks a little different. This is an older version of it, but you can see. This life skills assessment, and up at the top, the one the person never does it, or they need direct support or instruction to do it, all the way up to 5, where they always do it and they do it independently. And so we have people rank a person's skills based on these domains. So what we kind of did was we lumped things together. Because we're not an ILS program, we're not an independent living services program, home, health, and safety were kind of lumped together because we were going to do some elements of that domain because, that's helpful. But what we weren't going to do was to get too ramped up, because our services were more for community, social, recreational, and behavioral and social skills. So those were the things that we kind of the domains that we felt were that we needed to focus on, but we also needed to make sure that people knew how to be at home and out in the community in a safe and healthy way. So we kind of came up with some goals around that. So maintaining good hygiene, telling time and a functional sense of time, prepares for the day so they get their coat and their lunch, whatever they need before they leave the house, can say or write their own name, fire safety. What this also tells us is what we're going to have to do to support that person. So you can see this person has some 1s and 2s and 3s, where they're only, where they're requiring a lot of prompting and a lot of support, but they also have they usually do it, or they're completely independent doing it. So what we do is we try to focus on, what they're not doing for themselves. So the 1s, 2s, and 3s tell us what that person needs to do to be a successful adult in today's world. If they're already doing things, the 4s and 5s, we know we don't have to really focus on that because that's something that they're already doing. This also is a great way to determine when someone comes in at intake. We give them this form as well. So there's 2 forms. There's the profile and the life skills assessment. And what we end up with is this really robust profile of the person that we can say, what do they want to learn and what do they need to learn. And this is the form that really tells us what they need to learn and what kinds of support are they going to need. So it allows us to really mitigate risk. So we can see, you know, if someone's a 1 and a 2 all the way up and down, we know we're going to have to provide a great deal of support for them to be in the community. If we see a bunch of 4s and 5s, we know that that person will learn quickly and that they'll probably be able to do, you know, some things independently right out of the gate, maybe even. So again, very interesting form. We've been using this for about 5-6 years now, and we've kind of adapted it and revised it. We love it. It's a really great way to find, you know, to set meaningful goals. But the other thing, if you look down at the bottom, you can see the average score. The reason we use this is that it's updated annually. So we take people in at intake and we give it to them. And that is our baseline. We get a baseline score of, so for this person, it's 3.4 is the average score. So that would be the baseline score. On an annual basis, we revise this and we reassess the person's life skills, and we look at, you know, are they improving? Are they now a 4.4, or are they, you know, are they a 5? And at that point, you know, when we start getting 4s and 5s, that's when we start to fade our services and we start to say, you know, this person really doesn't need us except for these, maybe this 1, 3. And let's focus on this 1, 3, and the rest of the services aren't so necessary anymore. So it allows us to really see progress. It allows us to know when services should be faded and when you know, when they're no longer necessary. So we're not locking people into a lifetime of programming, but really trying to encourage the idea of social self-sufficiency is what we like to call it. So what are we trying to teach them? Again, it's, you know, hard skills are very important, like how to drive a wheelchair, you know, how to use a Dynavox out in the community, how to use a knife to cut, you know, buttoning a shirt, crossing a street. These are all physical skills that you can teach someone if you know, they're unable to do it currently. The other thing that we focus on is time telling and calendars and really kind of being able to use that in a functional way. Money skills, you know, not just can they count money, or do they know what $20 will get them, but can they do $1 over? When someone says that's $4.50, can they say, okay, here's $4 and another one, so that they're not just opening their wallet and kind of, you know, giving their wallet to the person so that they can take the money out. We also work on budgeting and making sure people realize, you know, when you go to work, how much money do you earn, and that there is a paycheck, and what does that look like? And it's based on the number of hours you work, because many times people don't get it, especially if they've been in a work center where it's a piece rate. You know, they really, you know, they know that, you know, the time studies means they get more money, but you know, it doesn't really, they're very confused by it. So we work with people on reading paychecks and understanding that, you know, every hour I work, I get X number of dollars. And then also, you know, what does $5 buy you? What does $20 buy you? What does $200 buy you? You know, and what does rent cost? What does a phone cost? What does cable cost? So that people can start seeing, you know, the importance and start understanding, you know, the benefits of going to work financially, but also, you know, how to manage their money and spend their money wisely. The other thing that we work on is math and reading in the community. Tech skills, phones are a lifeline. So what we do is we strongly encourage everybody in the program to have a phone, and preferably a smart one, because then we can actually teach them to use, you know, pictures and other things, and you know, and GPS and all sorts of things, and then they don't have to be so reliant on you know, text or whatever. So we teach them to use the internet, we teach them to use phones, we teach them to use computers. All of these things are so important in today's world. And then navigating and traveling in the community and stranger danger and all of the things that go along with being in the community. And what do you do when you're lost? All of these things are critical skills that need to often be taught, because the person is someone who might be so used to being led everywhere they go. They're not used to really navigating and finding things. They're used to following an instructor or following a teacher. When we get people from San Francisco Unified Schools and the transition programs, they follow us like little ducklings, and they don't often know how to cross the street safely, and they don't often, because they're so used to this, the staff person kind of managing that, or the para or the teacher, and they're so used to a bell structure, like the bell rings and I go on break. We've had people who came into the program who literally didn't know to ask to go to the bathroom, because they were so regimented in the bell rings and I go to the bathroom then, and there's no bells out in the world. So it was really kind of an eye-opening experience when we started realizing how prompt dependent many people are, and how we need to really help them to make decisions and to think on their own and to problem solve, and to ask for support and assistance when needed. And then again, of course, vocational skills or employability skills. So we use time management and telling time. So one of the things that we give our people is a weekly schedule that's written in stone, we like to say, because we really, once you have a whole bunch of balls in the air and a whole bunch of groups going, it really can be very, very chaotic if you switch things up every week. And people also are taught to go to meeting spots for activities. That we'll have a Starbucks or something that's close to the site, so that we can get the group together, or at a midpoint between that we know the person can get to this point, so we don't have to go all the way to their house to go get them. So there's meeting spots all over the city that people are taught to utilize. And then some of the people, like this young man, Julio, is an independent traveler pretty much at this point, because he's been in the program for a while, and he can go in between activities on his own. So he works in the morning, and then he meets up with a group in the afternoon for activities. He also has some independent stuff. So on Tuesdays from 11 to 3, he actually goes to the YMCA with his friend Danny, and that is done independently. At this point, he doesn't need support to go to the YMCA any longer. And also on Wednesday, he also goes independently to a city college class he meets his friends in the cafeteria, they have lunch together, and then he goes to an art class at City College independently. So right now, what the community side is supporting is they get him together. He participates in lunch and sports. We have a basketball group that meets in Dolores Park, and that's kind of a social recreational type of activity for him. And then on Thursdays, he has budgeting and financial literacy. So he's learning how to read his paycheck. He's also learning how to monitor his spending and to make financial decisions. And then on Fridays, he goes to work, and then he goes home, and his ILS service helps him to do his laundry and clean his house and grocery shop. The other thing you can see on there is on Saturday, we offer them, especially people who are more independent but still not initiating going out with their friends or doing things. We will actually put a suggestion there. So he's a huge Giants fan. So all we have to do is kind of really say, we taught him how to buy bleacher tickets. So he knows how to buy the $10 bleacher seat and how to go. So we're teaching him to call his friend Simon. And so Jefferson is our staff person. So Jefferson is helping him to kind of plan how to go to the Giants and the Cubs game on Saturday, and what do you need to do to kind of find your friend, and where are you going to meet, what are you going to, how much money do you need, all of that stuff. So Jefferson kind of supports it, and they are now, he and Simon are now, they call each other and they say, let's go, and they go buy the $10 seats. and go sit in the bleachers. The other thing we have is a time card. You can see over here, this is a time card that we use for volunteering. So we treat it like a job. And so when a person starts work at a volunteer site, we have them sign in. So they're using their watch, they're using time functionally. We also assign a timekeeper for the group. And that person is the person who says, you know, it's getting late, we need to start wrapping up. And so they're making this decision as to it's almost time to go. And it's not the community instructor who's saying it's time to go, let's wrap up. So they're making these decisions and they're becoming more and more self-sufficient and more independent because of it. It also shows them how to track their time. So with the time card, they're responsible for kind of saying work is different. And while I'm working, I have to kind of track my time. Because we've had a few people who would go to work and they would, you know, they knew they had to start at 8 and they finished at 3. And sometimes they would finish their work early and they would literally stand in front of the clock and wait for 15, 20 minutes until it kind of flipped over to 3, and then they'd punch out because that was when they, so, you know, obviously their employers got a little pissed about this or a little miffed that they were standing there clock watching in a very graphic way, you know, like pretty much literally in front of it. So one of the reasons we created this was that, you know, your work is done, even if it's not 3, let's sign out and let's punch out. So it was one of the employment specialists was like, you know, you people in the community, can you please, you know, really work with people, because we're getting these people who are just standing in front of the clock watching it tick. Because they have to punch out at 3 o'clock. And so we try to, even though their schedule over here says, you know, 3 o'clock, if they get their work done at 4 o'clock, you know, if they're done early, we teach them that, you know, that's when you're done, you know, that's especially at work, that's when you sign out. So telling time and time management. And again, I talked about the money and budgeting skills. This is something, you know, again, it's not a class, but we do have, this is a big pile of fake money. We have thousands of dollars in fake money, and the community instructors carry it so that they can teach people how to count bills and how to make, you know, as many of them have a $20 bill, and they know if I go up and I buy lunch and I give this $20 bill to this person, I'll get my lunch, and then I get this pile of money back. And we had one young woman who came in, and her sister gave her a $20 bill every day. Yeah, I know that's a great sister to have. So every day she'd get a $20 bill in her wallet. And so she always had money, and we didn't really think about it until one day she came in and she was all, you know, excited. And she was like, my sister didn't give me my $20 bill. I don't have money for lunch. I don't have money for lunch. And we said, well, you know, let's look in your wallet. You don't have any money? And she said, no, I don't. My sister didn't give me my $20. I don't have any money. I don't have any money. And we said, well, go get your backpack. And she came over and we said, let's look in your backpack. Let's see if, you know, let's look in your wallet. And she opened her backpack and her wallet, and she had $435 in her backpack. And no 20s. There were no 20s. She was right. There was no 20 in there, but it was like all 10s and, you know, 5s and 10s. And she would just throw it in there because it was, to her, it was pretty useless. So we then realized that, you know, we needed to teach people, you know, there are many ways to make a $20 bill and how to do that. And then also dollar over. So again, if you know, the cashier person says, you know, I need $13.96, you give them $13 and another dollar for the 96 cents. So we're teaching them dollar over. We're teaching them budgeting, paychecks, banking, credit. We had another young woman who suddenly packages started to arrive. She didn't want to send them to her house. She was smart enough to know that people would lift them off the street, and so she started sending packages to the WorkLink office, and we were all like, you know, what is going on? All of a sudden we're starting to get these packages, and all of a sudden there was many of them. lots and lots and lots of packages. And so I called this young woman and I said, what is one, what's going on? And she said, well, and she said it was a gift card and it was her birthday. And I said, okay. And then they kept coming and coming. And I was like, wait a minute, this is not, this is an unlimited gift card, if anything, so I asked her to bring her gift card in, and she brought it in, and it was not a gift card. It was a credit card her mother had given her for emergency purposes. And she knew enough about gift cards, and she thought that that's what that was. She had no idea that this had to be paid by her. So she was just going out spending wildly. And I immediately called her mother, and I'm like, I just want to make you aware of this. And her mother was like, oh my God, I just saw the bill, because it had just come in. So just working with people on what is a debit card and where does that money come from? It's not just a money machine on the street that you plug this card in and this money comes out. So really helping people to understand, what is a balance, and how to check their balance, and how to really be frugal with their money. The other thing that we really look at is soft skills or sandbox skills, and these are so critical to being socially involved in the community. So we really look at managing your time and prioritizing your responsibilities, because that's kind of hard for people. Making judgments and solving problems, really impossible sometimes, because people, again, are so used to having all the problems solved, or someone tell them what they're going to do or how it's going to work. So we make them be the ones to like fix things. So once they really have learned something, our community instructors really go from being helpful to being not so helpful, and their role really shifts to screwing things up. So they really, start, making, jamming the copiers, or start making them run out of paper. They start, breaking things, they start just really kind of, bumbling things up. And then people have to come up with, how do we fix this? How do we make this right? What do we need to do? Who do we need to ask? So those are the things that we teach. So really actively teaching problem solving. Communicating and professional behavior, of course. Professionalism is something that we really stress, and communicating in polite ways. And then, of course, focus and concentration, really staying focused at work, and especially, obviously in social situations, it's not such a big deal. Physical stamina and endurance, really working on wellness and fitness, and then, having a work ethic and kind of a good attitude and motivated to be at work, and to realize that I'm a helper and people rely on me, and this is what responsibility is. So those are the things that we really want people to understand, and to really develop that kind of work ethic. That I'm not the person who's being helped. I'm the person who's doing the helping, so that they can develop that positive attitude that comes from helping others, and being valued by others. Taking initiative and being able to work independently. It's really kind of funny, because we teach them the word, oh, you're doing it independently, and then they start throwing it out at us. I'm doing this independently. And so, when they start telling us they're going to do it independently, we start backing off and letting them do it. So, really taking, and then of course, reinforcing that initiative. Speed and quality of work, and then again, teamwork. And in addition to timekeepers at our volunteer job, we also have a team leader, so that they learn to listen to their peers. Oftentimes, one of the things that our work services team has always said is they think I'm the job coach. They think I'm the boss. They don't understand that their boss is the boss, And so what we have to do is teach them who's the boss. So we change it. So we don't just make it a staff person who's the boss. In fact, we try to not make it the staff person who's the boss. So we assign a peer leader at these volunteer jobs, and the peer leader is to really kind of you know, marshal the troops, and their role is to communicate with the volunteer coordinator and to set up the job for the day, whatever it is, and to assign their peers to a specific element of the task. And then you know, to work with the timekeeper to make sure we finish on time, and then so they're the leader for the day. And some of them it's really quite amusing because you know, you give them, you know, the power and it goes right to their head, and they can be kind of tyrannical about it. And other ones are you know, really hesitant and you know, don't know how to direct people. But the real beauty of it is they learn to listen to each other, and they don't, it's not a staff person, so they're really learning to do to work together and to work as a team, which is really important in the community when they're out, and especially when they're independent, that they listen to each other, and that they are comfortable directing each other, and you know, saying things like, no, we shouldn't be doing this, or we should be doing this. So really that peer-to-peer mentoring is so critical. One of the other things that we have is again, teaching problem solving and building confidence in the community. This is something that we really hang our hat on. We want to make sure that people know what to do if things don't go right. In today's world, things don't go right quite often. So we really work on, you know, teaching problem solving, you know, navigating again from their home into the community and back home again, so that they know how to find their way home. And then also, you know, street crossing and stranger danger, you know, are very, very important. How do you know when, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are not good people, and what do you do if you are facing a situation that you're not comfortable with? How do you find someone to help? How do you you know, tell them to leave you alone? How take out your, you know, what do you do? So kind of reaching out for assistance using cell phones, identifying people who can help, identifying people to stay away from, and really asking for help. Problem solving. So one of the things that we have is once people get very, very independent, we don't just fade our services and say, oh, they're independent, let's, you know, that's good, off we go. We really start, we put them in what we call our Let's Get Lost activities, and the community instructor literally takes the group out and gets them good and lost and says, now what? Now what do you do? And we teach them to, you know, either, you know, identify a landmark that they know, identify a bus route that they know, ask the bus driver, you know, is this how I go, or is this where does this bus go there? So that they get used to talking to bus drivers, that they get used to talking to BART agents, that they get used to, you know, finding a policeman or a shopkeeper who they can trust. We also work on disaster training. So, you know, in the event of a huge disaster, like a tornado or out here, earthquake, you know, what would you do, and how, you know, where do you go, and what is the Red Cross, and what are they about? So disaster preparedness, you know, unfortunately, active shooters has become a part of it. Some other things, you know, where do you go, what do you do? In kind of a situation like that. So Let's Get Lost is really quite fun. And it's like a scavenger hunt too. They really enjoy it. And you know, they you know, we get them out there, and then they really feel like they've accomplished something when they find their way. And then the other thing that we teach them is how to use their cell phone. So if they can't, you know, they can't figure it out, what are you going to do? You're going to have to reach out. So we teach them to FaceTime us. You know, we'll bring in the cavalry. Show us where you're at, and we will bring in the cavalry. So we will actually then, or we have them call their parents as well and check in, so that they're using their cell phone as a lifeline. And when they need help, or if they're lost, that they reach out to us. So they're learning to FaceTime WorkLink, and then what they do is like here they take their phone and here's where I am. This is where, you know, this is what I, you know, this is, can you help me? And then we can, you know, figure out where they're at. And we can have them, you know, show me, you know, who's around there. Is there a BART agent, or is there, you know, so, or we'll get calls like the bus isn't working, you know, the bus isn't coming, you know, and sometimes it happens like that, and we'll check Muni, and lo and behold, sure enough, you know, the J is down or whatever. So we will then, you know, if need be, we send out the cavalry. We'll just say, you need to just sit there and wait, and, you know, and we put out a word on WhatsApp, you know, so-and-so is at this corner. Is someone around? And community instructor, like, I'm pretty close to there. I can go over and you know, they save them. Or, you know, what we do is, you know, walk them through how to get home if they're a more independent traveler. So it's a really great way. And the reason we did this is another provider in San Francisco did not do this, taught someone how to use BART, and then faded their services. And the person missed their BART stop and didn't know what to do, and rode to the end of the line, which was an hour and a half, you know, Livermore, which is, you know, an hour outside of San Francisco and quite far, and got there, had never been to Livermore, had never, and was told to get off the train. So he got off the train. He did not look disabled, went outside, sat down by the curb, and the BART agent saw him there and thought he was just waiting for someone to pick him up. And so he didn't really say anything or do anything. And the next day he came in, and the guy was still sitting on the curb. And Livermore is quite hot. And so it was getting hotter and hotter, and he was sitting there still, and the guy thought, well, maybe he's homeless, and has no place to go. And as it got hotter, like 100 degrees or whatever, you know, in the afternoon the next day, he went over to offer the guy some water, and then realized he had a developmental disability, and then of course took action and helped him to, you know, call the police. And in San Francisco, meanwhile, everybody was losing their mind trying to find this person. And so at WorkLink, we were very clear that, you know, this one is never going to happen to any of the people that we serve. You know, we are going to teach them what to do, how to reach out, how to ask for help, how to take a card up to someone and say, I need help, will you call WorkLink? So everybody has medical releases in their backpacks that state what hospital they go to and who their doctors are, and if they're allergic to any sorts of medicines. But in addition, they have a little like an assistance card, a little medical assistance card, or a help me, I'm lost card is what we call them. And we teach them to get those out, and even the people who are nonverbal, to take those up to somebody and show them to somebody, so that they, you know, that they ask for assistance if they need it, and not to just sit on the corner and you know, wait for something to happen. Okay, so that's Let's Get Lost. Again, it's a very active way of you know, getting people into the getting people used to being out in the community independently. So where to teach? Again, that's kind of what we teach. So hard skills, soft skills, but then, you know, where do you teach them? We try to find, you know, where it happens in the community. Where does this generally happen in the community? So that young man who wants to play the saxophone, you know, where do people play the saxophone in the community? And, you know, how can we help them to get connected with other saxophone players, or you know, so really going out and, you know, where does this generally happen? I was working with a Cleveland program once, and one of the things that they found was that, you know, they were like, the one thing that this young woman loves is dolls. She loves, you know, like the expensive dolls. And that was her hobby. And she had a whole room full of dolls. And the people that were working with her were like, we don't know anything about dolls. You know, we don't know where, you know, because I was like, that's her tribe. You know, you got to help her, you know, find other people that are into dolls. And they're like, yeah, there's nobody out there that's into, and I was like, go on the internet and Google Cleveland dolls and see what happens. And you know, and there was this, you know, kind of silence on the other end of the line, and they were like, oh my God. and there were like 50 doll clubs. There was, these trade shows. There was like just, like doll clubs, trading clubs, blah, blah, blah. So they started kind of talking to these people and trying to get, to integrate this woman into the doll community in Cleveland. And she is just, she built 3 or 4 friends through the things that they were doing, and she attends these events now, and she actually they have her volunteer in organizing some of these trade show kind of things so that she can go free. And she's built a little village of people around her that are other doll lovers, and that's what this is about, is really connecting people to the people that they need to be connected. And if that's how they define themselves, then your job is to figure out, where these people are at, and they're out there. So, the internet and Google are amazing tools. We used to map our community. We used to go physically walk around, which we still do. In some instances, we'll go to some neighborhoods and just kind of, meander about. But again, with Google Maps, you don't even have to leave your office. You don't even have to leave well, now you can't. So there you go. So you can get out and really, find these places. The other thing that we do is develop a range of diverse sites. So really finding, a lot of different types of activities and different kinds of sites. So not just our volunteer sites are very, very diverse. We don't have 2 or 3 that look the same. So we're not going to, but we're really, looking at, we have something where we can teach like kind of outdoors. We have a park and rec site where we can teach people to use wheelbarrows and water and do landscaping and do planting seedlings and things like that. And we can test to see if they like dirt, so that we don't get burned by doesn't like dirt again. So we could see, do people like this? It's hot, it's dirty. The other sites that we have are in professional offices downtown at nonprofits, or in museums or things like that, where it's very fancy and very, very different. And so a wide range of sites where you can teach different things. The YMCA could be a great place, not only to work out, but also we had a young man who was very, very, he didn't know how to use his Dynavox. He didn't know how to, he was very shy. So we actually stuck him at the front desk, and he had to collect cards and hand out towels. And he became so social just from that experience, because the people were very warm and welcoming. And he was able to, see that, to build confidence in his ability to kind of interact with people. And his role was to really literally take people's ID cards and file them in the little file, and to give people a towel or a lock. And he was able to do that and build his confidence. So really having a range of diverse sites that you can teach multiple things, and looking for consistent opportunities, challenging tasks. One program I worked with, they were developing sites, and they came in and they said, we found a site. We're our first volunteer site. And and I said, well, where is it? It's right next door to where the facility. And for a lot of people, the navigating and getting there is part of the process. So don't be lazy. Don't just find things right next door because it's close. And that's opportunistic. That's lazy. But the other thing that this site, we went and I said, well, what are they doing? Well, the task was that they were going to empty the garbage cans for this small office. And we went, and the office wasn't just small; it was tiny. And I think there were probably 3 or 5 garbage cans. And they were bringing a group of 6, and I'm like, you're gonna have fights over who gets to empty the trash can, because there's only 3 of them. And it wasn't challenging. It didn't teach a skill that was really necessary, and it didn't provide, you know, enough opportunity or consistent opportunity to really instruct people or teach people. You know, I think they did far better with the next one. But again, be very conscientious when you're developing community sites that you're really looking for the best place to teach. And again, don't be be strategic. Look for diverse locations that you can teach multiple things. Things that are close to transportation lines so that people can get to them. And again, following the Department of Labor guidelines for volunteering. Do not volunteer for for-profit businesses, because that can get them in big trouble if someone were to report them. You know, the Department of Labor kind of sees that as slavery and is not very, they do not take kindly to it, so that those employers or those businesses could get in big trouble. So again, nonprofits, it has to be a nonprofit. It has to be in a situation that is a volunteering opportunity and not you know, something that they need to be paid for. So community sites and public resources, these are some of them. The picture there is a young man this is Muttville. It's a senior dog rescue in San Francisco. And we have a number of people who, for whatever reason, don't have pets or had pets and they died recently. And this is an opportunity for them to go and walk dogs. It's also an opportunity to teach time skills, because they have to clock in, clock out each dog they walk. So they are, you know, they have to put down, they have to look at their watch, they have to write down the dog's name, and they have to write down what time it is, and then they have to write down what time the dog came back, and then also if the dog did anything important outside, has to be kind of put into the log. So they're walking dogs, they're working on time skills, they're you know, they're working, it's a very social place. The people who run it are very social. So it's just a really wonderful opportunity. And plus they, you know, for many of them, this is their way to have animals in their life. So Park and Rec, I talked about the landscaping. They also have classes that they offer, and swimming pools and tennis courts and basketball courts and all things that we can use. So public resources. There's also community events and celebrations that you can participate in your areas. Again, transportation and safety, getting there might be the goal for somebody, is really working on street crossing or backing my chair onto a lift on a bus. You know, those are things that that maybe the individual's working on. Okay, religious and service organizations might be something, if that's something that the person values. But again, you know, don't just put them in churches or just because it's available, but it's got to be something that is meaningful. So you know, if someone does have an interest in that, we had a young man who was very interested in in being Jewish. He was Jewish, and he wanted to do something with other people who were Jewish. And so we went and looked at, you know, what kind of you know, religious and service organizations are out there. And he's now volunteering at the Jewish Contemporary Museum, and he works in the coat room once a week, and he does it independently at this point. And this was something our service coordinators / program managers spotted for the first few times, and worked very closely with the volunteer coordinator at the museum to kind of get him up and rolling. And we created some cheat sheets for him and some other things. And he now has been doing it for 2.5 years by himself, independently. And the community or the service coordinator still kind of pops in once in a while and just checks in with Joel, the volunteer coordinator at the museum, and how's things going? What's going on? Is he doing okay? And then if anything comes up, Joel knows to call us, and we can certainly come in and help ameliorate any sort of issue. So again, public resources, very important, because we don't want, and then also one of the other things that we look at is not focusing on disability specific resources. So special programs for people who have disabilities, but public resources so that we can get them involved with others, and And oftentimes with special programs, they happen at special times, or you know, there's limitations as to when they run. So the person is not able to really kind of access those when they need. With public resources, they're available all the time, you know, weekends, whenever. So really teaching people to use public resources whenever possible. And then, of course, one of the main things we're really looking at is really integrating people and getting them involved, you know, in the regular community, so to speak. So, you know, public resources are really important. And again, pathways to employment, you know, volunteering and internships are so critical. And again, one of the things that we say, you know, we're not just out there kind of messing about, and it's not about bagging rice so much as really, you know, what are we trying to teach people? We're trying to teach them decision making. We're trying to teach them leadership skills. We're trying to teach them time management, all of the things I talked about earlier. And then also giving them an opportunity to give back and to feel what it feels like to be a helper is so important. And again, as earlier, I talked about treating it like a job. They report to a supervisor. There's a team leader. We clock them in and clock them out so that they realize when, you know, when I'm done, I clock out. And we teach them to, you know, to really the sense of responsibility, taking direction from the leader, the boss, whoever that may be. And then also we also teach them, you got to get the job done. So, you know, if it's 3 o'clock and they have one more packet to make, or one more you know, bag of rice to make so that they can seal the box and, you know, finish it. And oftentimes they'll be like, it's time to go. It's time to go. It's 3 o'clock. It's time to go. And we'll be like, no, we got to get the job done. What's the job? We got to get the job done. And we teach them that sense of responsibility and, you know, what needs to happen. And again, 85% of employers say it's the soft skills, not the technical skills, that are so important to job success. So, you know, building soft skills into our volunteering is, and we look for opportunities to teach people to greet people, to socialize with people. So, you know, having a little break time so that people can sit down and talk about fishing on the weekend or whatever they do. So really building bridges wherever we go and really looking for those teachable moments. So when somebody says something, you know, that we kind of grab it and help people to kind of start conversations, or, you know, greeting people, asking for assistance, or telling people when something's wrong, you know, is really important, so that they learn to interact with others and not just the staff person is there and fixing everything. Also creating those opportunities to work. Again, I talked about peer mentoring and that leadership role, and learning to take directions from others, not just paid staff. So the volunteer coordinators at these sites are considered the boss, and we refer to them as the boss. And we make sure that, you know, people understand that it's not the WorkLink staff person. We're just there to facilitate and to you know, make sure that people are learning, but we are not the boss. So the other thing that we use is T-charts, and we use these to define social concepts like professionalism. What is professionalism? What's respect? What's disrespectful? You know, and to help people to build a social vocabulary, or to understand what we're talking about. So when we talk about teamwork, here's a T-chart. You can see it looks like a T. And what we're looking at is, what does this look like and what does it sound like, so that we can make it concrete for those kinds of learners, especially people with autism. We had a young woman who would come in and she'd say, what is goofy? And we'd all be like, oh, you know, I really don't know what goofy is, you know. And so we'd say, okay, well, what does it look like and what does it sound like when someone's being goofy, so that she can then identify, you know, what this concept is. So it's a great way for concrete thinkers to really understand. The other thing that we do is it really draws distinctions between similar things. So friends who are boys versus boyfriends. We can do one for friends who are boys, and what does that look like? And then boyfriends, what does that look like? And then also to like compare and contrast social constructs. So, you know, what does respect look like and what does disrespect look like? And so that we can have that conversation with them, you know, and if we say to them, you're being disrespectful of your friend, then they know what we're talking about. So again, it builds that social vocabulary. You know, what is cooperation? What is flexibility? And we tell people to be flexible all the time and they don't know what that is. You know, this is a way for them to really understand and learn. So using T-charts is one of the things that our community instructors do on a regular basis. So manners, ethic, you know, work ethic and initiative. These are the things that we teach. You know, people rely on me. Inside voice, you know, good hygiene. When someone smells bad, we tell them point blank, you know, are you busy? Knocking on a door and saying, are you busy? Can I talk to you for a second? So that professionalism is really important. And that initiative, I'm done, what's next, is really, really important, because many times people will just finish something and stop and wait for someone to come and say to them, oh, you finished. So what we do is, I'm done, what's next, is what we teach them. And then the other thing, teamwork, that we teach them is, can I help, you know, can I help you with that? Or let's do this together. Or can you help me with this? So teaching them to ask for assistance, teaching them to assist others, teaching them manners, all of those things, and greeting people. All of that is built in. And so our community instructors, when they first start a site, we look for, where can we teach the soft skills? Where can we build these into the volunteering? The other thing that we're working on is kind of leadership, time management, and making decisions. So this young man is sorting carrots, but what he's doing is he's actually making decisions. He is someone who has difficulty making decisions, and you know, if you say to him, is this a good carrot or a bad carrot, it'll take him like 3 minutes to figure it out. And he's got you know, so it's, you know, so this is something that now, you know, in the course of that volunteering, he's got to make 100 decisions. And it's not the community instructor who's doing it, it's him. And so what we're teaching him is, you know, good versus bad. You need to decide. And so he then becomes more confident in his ability to make a decision and to commit. Also the timekeeper, you know, again, and then, you know, assigning a team leader to organize the day's project and to you know, assign the tasks and then report the accomplishments to the volunteer coordinator at the end of the day. So this is what we accomplished and this is what we did. So again, building in those opportunities for the volunteer coordinator to check in and say, oh God, I don't know how we would ever work without this group coming in, and, you know, thank you so much. All of those kudos and all of that stuff really does help people to understand that they are helpers and that they are valued, and that people are really happy that they're there. So fostering community inclusion, it's not about being in the community, it's about building community. So that's the thing that we want to do. So inclusion versus integration, it's a very thin line. But inclusion means more than just buying a cup of coffee at a Starbucks. It takes routine opportunities to engage with others in meaningful ways. And really, you must give back, you must add value, you must be seen as a helper. And people then start to see you in a value-adding way. And that routine opportunity, that ability to make friends. So it's not field trips. We're not taking field trips to places. We're really going more than once. You know, on a weekly basis for 6 months, so that people can really feel comfortable, can really understand what's going on, can really take charge of what they're doing, and you know, and really begin to be confident and independent, and then also to make those friends. So inclusion goes further than just being integrated. Integrated means you're in the community next to others. Inclusion means that you're accepted, respected, and valued by those people. It's not just physical proximity to people without disabilities. It means that you're missed. If you're not there, you're missed. And that's how we define the worth of and the meaningfulness of the activities that we do. Will they be missed if they're not there? Yes, should be the answer. So here's Simon. Simon and his coworker. So one of the things that we've done is tried to make sure that everybody knows that it's not very hard, but that Simon is a huge Giants fan. And his coworker is a huge Giants fan as well. This is Albert, and Albert has season tickets, and Albert works next to Simon and has become really good friends with him. And whenever Albert has a free, he's got a pair of tickets. So whenever he has a ticket left, he'll call up Simon on the weekend or on for night games or whatever, and he'll pick him up and take him to the Giants game. That is inclusion. That's what we're after. So we had, of course, had to instruct Simon on how to go to the ballpark and how to buy garlic fries and how to buy a beer, and you know, how to find a seat and stuff like that. So he's well schooled in his way around the park and very confident there. And now he and his friend Albert go and have just a total ball. That's inclusion. So building meaningful connections, you know, really starting with that, again, mapping, kind of assessing the person's hobbies and interests and the community skills they need to manage, and things they need to learn and things they want to learn, and then creating those consistent schedules, again, so important, so that people have an opportunity to really gain independence. And when they first start something, they're not so good at it, they don't like it, they go a couple more times, they start to kind of get their head around it, and then they start to really understand, you know, that I'm good at this, this is really great, I'm starting to like this, people are liking me, I'm starting to learn people's names, and then it starts to be really meaningful. So we really, again, starting with the person's interests, passions, and their personality, where does this person need to be, and who do we need to connect them with? How do they define themselves? We look at their neighbors, their neighborhood, really connecting them so that they can walk out their door and see people they know. And then looking at, you know, the other thing, there's a great program in Cincinnati called Starfire that people should take a look at, and they use they help people to build social capital by doing community projects in their neighborhood. So they come up with a need in their neighborhood and they build projects. So it could be a community garden. It could be a you know, a monthly potluck that this person takes on and starts to manage and develop. So they see themselves as connectors. So the program is called Starfire. And one of the really beautiful videos that they have is a young man who, I don't know why everything I do focuses on dogs, but his parents, he had pretty significant autism, and his parents were like, well, if we had they live in a slightly urban area, and there was no place for, you know, dogs to run, and they didn't really trust him taking the dog and letting the dog run in a place that wasn't locked, you know, or gated, fenced. So they said, you know, if we had a puppy park or a run for dogs that were kind of untrained, you know, this would be great, you know, and there wasn't anything of such in their neighborhood, but there was an empty lot that had nothing in it. And so they petitioned, and his project was to do a pop-up puppy park and petition the neighborhood for developing a puppy run. So they promoted this pop-up puppy park, and they had him walk around with a petition saying, you know, wouldn't it be great if this piece of land was fenced in and was a dog run. And lo and behold, it worked. They got so many signatures, so many people showed up that they were able to actually build a dog run, a fenced-in dog run on that piece of property. And so this young man changed his neighborhood And now he actually can walk his dog to that place and let his dog run, and they've taught him to kind of put his dog back on the leash and walk home. So now he's independent in his neighborhood. His neighbors all know him, and they know him, as a helper, and not as a young man with autism, but as the person who helped put this park in place. So really interesting things. My neighbors, my neighborhood, and then looking at all aspects and all domains of life, and really kind of how can we make someone's life really meaningful. By what do they need support or assistance with, and how can we make them more self-reliant in those areas. If they're not helping cooking or they're not washing dishes after dinner, how can we help them to learn to do that so that they can help at home. How can we help to make them more independent in the community? How can we make them more independent, social, recreationally? How can we help them to call their friends and make that kind of a routine thing? Get them on Facebook, whatever, and teach them how to be safe on those sites. And again, what we're trying to do is building, that social professional network and who needs to be in. Looking at the whole person, again, that's profiling and that skills assessment, and looking at the supports that they need and the resources that they have. Looking at community services. And these community support services as we do our job coaching, with that expectation that for those that it can fade, it will fade. So really teaching, looking at this as a service, not a program, and really saying to ourselves, these services should be used for people who need them. And if someone no longer needs them, or they're independent or able to be, then it's, we can help them to transition into that actively. It is not just a dump and run. So again, this is Julio. Again, all the things that are important to him. He's athletic. He loves to ride his bike. He's a Giants fan too. He's artistic and creative, loves to draw and paint. Really strong family ties. He's got a huge Irish family. And then also, he's just really very social. He has to be busy, or he just, drives himself crazy and those around him. So, he needs to be busy. And then also his Christian faith is really important. So again, here's his schedule and what he's doing. And you can see each of those things is kind of addressed and dealt with. And so his life is meaningful, and we're able to kind of create friendships everywhere he goes. His friends at work, I think I mentioned, drove 2 hours to go to his basketball game, and that picture in the corner, this is a painting that he did at his art class. There's his lovely mother and sister. And then, this is him he doesn't just go to church. We went in and said, how can he help at church? So he goes to church, and he also teaches a Sunday school for young kids. And this is him getting an award at church for teaching a Sunday school for young kids. So his community instructor helps him to kind of put together a little lesson that he can then teach. And then also, he was one of the people that we instructed on how to use a Pac Bell, or was it Oracle Park. And he knows how to buy garlic fries and get a beer and find his seat, just like Simon. And and they go at night. They go to the day games. They go on Sundays. All we have to do is in the computer classes, we have them search. When are the Giants coming back to town? So again, we're trying to be the connector, not the connection. We make friends everywhere we go. We start conversations everywhere we go. We do not hover. We try to when people are or over help, we try to give people a little space. We let people struggle a little bit so that they can learn to problem solve. We look for commonalities between people. So if somebody starts talking about going hiking or doing something, and that's an interest that we know that the other person has, fishing, whatever it is, make that connection and say, oh, this person's a Giants fan too, or this person, so-and-so loves to fish. And then again, the weekend suggestions on the schedule, on, you know, letting them know when there's a special event or there's something that they can meet their friends. And then they know how to get to meeting spots, so we can say, well, you know how to get to the Starbucks on 9th. They know how to get to the Starbucks on 9th. That's, you know, why don't you go together, and you can help your friend to get to this event, and you can go together. So weekend suggestions and helping them to get together with a group of friends, so that they can attend things safely. And then teaching them to hang out and reach out. So we teach them to go to each other's houses. So now people are actually having people over to play video games. They're actually having football, you know, watching parties at their house on Sundays. We help people to organize date night, because that was a big deal. We had a couple people who would, like, you know, wanted to go on dates and didn't know how to do it. So we showed them how to do it. You know, you got to kind of come up with a thing that's have a consensus around what you're going to do, and make a time, and think about who's going to pay, you know, all the things that go into you know, going on a date. And then of course, cell phones, Facebook, how to be a good friend. So if you say you're going to do something, and people don't show up, there's, you know, we have their peers shame them, you know, like, you didn't show up, you said you were going to be there, that's not a good friend, you know. So, you know, really teaching them what it means to be a good friend. You need to let someone know if you're not going to go, or if something comes up. They also, this top picture is a cooking group, some members of a cooking group, and they were at City College. They decided that they were going to do a potluck. So the community instructor helped them to come up with a day that they would do the potluck, and it was going to be at Tim's house, and they made an invitation, and they invited their friends, and they had a potluck dinner. And it was so successful. It's now a club, and they do it kind of quarterly. So they have a potluck dinner club. So again, we're trying to build that village, build that community, and actively kind of facilitate the conversations and interactions where people go. And then once, you know, the goal is to really fade the group services. So once someone really gets good at something, we try to fade that, and again, to me and my friends, and to natural supports, and to more normalized times. If it's a Monday through Friday 9 to 3 kind of thing, you know, where does this actually happen, and how can we make that go? And then to kind of create opportunities if none exist. And we will talk more about this on the next call. But, you know, rural, suburban, and urban communities are very different. And where do people socialize, and how do people get together are very different. So we'll talk about this on the next one, since we're running out of time. And then also being creative. So Starfire, very creative about helping people to build social capital. And we'll talk more about some ideas from some more rural locations in Wisconsin and Utah, and in California and Tennessee. So we'll talk more about that. So what I wanted to do to end this was, I want you to give this a whirl. So we're gonna give you a community life skills assessment on someone, and a positive personal profile that we've mocked up. And what I want you to do is to take a look at that profile, and take a look at that skills set assessment, and see if you can identify 3 purposeful activities, or something that would be meaningful, a meaningful goal for this person. And then, using the internet, I want you to try and find a community location where you could actually teach the skills that that person needs to learn, or to get them connected to others. So where are the doll clubs if that person's into dolls? So, you know, finding out, you know, where are the potential places in your community. So I want you looking around your, don't be saying things that don't exist. I want you to actually go onto the internet and look at your local community, and where would people who define themselves this way, where would they meet? What would they do? How would you connect them to their community? Okay, so these are going to be the 2 handouts that are connected with and we'll send out the link to today's session. with these two handouts. So the two handouts, so it's for one person. It's for Debbie. So it's Debbie's profile and Debbie's life skills assessment. And what I want you to do is think about what is meaningful for Debbie, and what do you glean from these two documents, and then again, taking a look in your neighborhoods and in your local communities, where would you address this? Okay? And see if you can come up with 3 potential places in your community where you could take Debbie, and you could address either an interest that she has, or address a skill that she needs. Okay. Okay, so what you're going to do with these is, again, and this just gives you a little more information about how to do it. So really looking at what jumps out at you. What are their unique characteristics? What does the person need to learn? Where would you find her tribe? And then, again, listing the 3 places in your community. And on that note, love and work and love is all there is. These are the cornerstones of humanity. And that's kind of what we kind of hang our hat on in at WorkLink. And again, my information, if anybody has any needs, I'm going to stop the recording to make it